Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you so much for returning to the channel if you are a regular viewer, and if you haven't been here before and this is your first time clicking on the video, welcome to my channel. My name is Adam MacDonald and this is the home of the best Brighton Hove Albion content on YouTube and across social media. So thank you so much for getting involved. If you find yourself coming back here and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please hit it. It really helps me continue doing this channel. And just make this as good as we can. So thank you so much. Right, let's get straight into it. I wanted to bring up a topic that I've been thinking about for a while now, and it feels quite timely just considering a lot of the kind of transfer talk that we've been seeing over the last particularly couple of weeks, and the outgoings in particular that we've kind of been watching before our very eyes in terms of in terms of really seeing a real transformation, a real period of transition in the way our side has changed over the last, we could say like 2 or 3 years, but we could even really say in the last year or so. Particularly, what's triggering this kind of video this week is around the sales of Pervis Estupiñán and obviously the imminent sale, it looks like, let's hope it's a loan, of Facundo Buonanotte. Borussia Dortmund looking like they're interested. A few other clubs as well seem to be fighting for his signature. Evan Ferguson, of course, going out on loan to Roma in the last few days as well. And I think it's kind of just triggered a few thoughts around where this side is, how different this side is, and actually even the difference between the prime Roberto De Zerbi side, which was really only the best part of, he was the manager of the football club last May, which really isn't that long ago. And now I think our squad looks really different. Our first starting 11 looks brilliant. But it also looks very different as well. And thinking about why we've made those changes, what that indicates, and even just in terms of the style of players that we've bought and the style of players that we're moving on, there have been a lot of changes. So I think, starting with the kind of top line, I think a lot of people are speaking about is how Brighton have essentially just completely lost their South American, what was it, a quintet, probably six split or whatever you call 6 people. There were quite a lot of South American players, literally even only about 18 months ago. Obviously with Estupiñán, McAllister, Caicedo, Sarmiento, Enciso. I feel like there is more. Maybe that is it. And it really felt like we had a really, really strong South American kind of core running through our side of young, fiery, ambitious, exciting South American players. And it feels like, obviously we have lost a lot of those. Alexis, McAllister, Moises, Caicedo have been 2 players that moved on for kind of the betterment of their career, and it was there was no doubt about it that we were going to get big money and they were going to have big moves. Julio and Enciso, that one's gone really sad, really, in the way that's turned out. Obviously, Estupiñán, it's a shame, but really it's a move that probably makes sense for him in terms of him going into the prime of his career. And it's seeming like the reports, Andy Naylor was putting out a report just today saying that Pervis Estupiñán was going to go into this season being the 3rd choice left back. We can get onto that in a second. I personally find that hard to believe. But, that seemed like that was going to be the case. And we've just really seen a change. So what is this? Is this a product of circumstance? Is this as a result of maybe Fabian Hürzeler just not liking the players that he's seeing? And what's it indicative of the change that we're going to see? Let's go to that left-back situation with Pervis leaving. Maxim De Kuyper clearly coming in is a player who fits Fabian Hürzeler's side down to a T. He's obviously going to be suitable to playing in a back 3. He's 4 years younger than Estupiñán. We got him for decent money, and presumably there'll be a good resale value. I suppose it is interesting that we didn't really kind of make any money on the Estupiñán deal, but I suppose a club would argue that actually the way that kind of amortization works in terms of really the value we got out of him on the pitch, making your money back there or thereabouts is a good deal for him. Would he have been our 3rd choice left back going into this season? I'm not so sure he would have. I think, while Ferdi, Kadioglu, while Maxim De Kuyper look like excellent talents, we've certainly not seen the best of them in Brighton shirts. We don't really know much of a gauge on how they will be as left backs going into into next season, Jack Hinshelwood, while he is a fantastic fullback when he needs to be, it's not his natural position. So I think there would have been a place for him. It clearly seems like, though, more generally, Fabian Hürzeler has overseen a period where the squad has changed massively. 2 years ago, it was Danny Welbeck, João Pedro, Evan Ferguson. Now Evan Ferguson and Danny Welbeck are gone. We're going into an era with Tsimas, Kostoulas, Danny Welbeck. The options are much different now, and we're seeing changes. So why has it been ripped apart so much? I'd kind of felt like last season. Yeah, I think it's difficult in the moment to really, notice the way a team changes and notice the differences in it. But actually, you look back to say, even 2 years ago, there was a game we played. Even it was like 18 months ago, a game we played in our, in the Europa League season, and the team looked so different then. Buonanotte playing week in, week out, and Ciso playing week in, week out. Ferguson banging in the goals. And it's just interesting how much it changes. I think this season's going to be an example of a season where we're going to be in transition again. We just are. I spoke about it a lot last season in terms of Brighton having to have a little bit more patience and the fan base having to have a bit more patience because of the sheer number of players we brought in last season. And I think maybe I was a bit naive in thinking that this season would be, an opportunity for this side to really kick on. I think we absolutely will be able to kick on. And I think having a year under the belt for so many of the players that we signed that look brilliant, Gruder, Rutter, etc., Minteh, players who do look excellent. We are also going to a season again where we're getting rid of someone we know can score goals. Admittedly, he hasn't recently, but someone we know who can score goals in Evan Ferguson or João Pedro. We've moved them on. And we're now bringing in two completely unknown players in Kostoulas and Tsimas. At left back, we're moving on a player in Pervis who we know is a top left back for the Premier League. Could play probably for a top 5 team in the Premier League. And we're bringing in a lad who we don't know. It is an unknown quantity. At centre half as well, we've made a lot of changes. Lewis Dunk will probably play a little bit more of a bit part role next season. Maybe not, but there's 2 new centre halves coming in. We've obviously got Coppola and Buscagli. And of course, Aaron Cashin's going out on loan, but he's a player we've brought in as well. Igor Julio going out on loan. We're taking a risk really going into this season with having to rely on the fact that players like Buscagli and Coppola are going to be up to scratch, because we're going to be moving on players like Igor that we know are decent, and Adam Webster, with an injury, a long-term injury, it looks like going into this season it's going to be even more changes. In that midfield, I suppose that is one area going into this season where there is a little bit more consistency and we understand how the side's going to look. We know probably, in my opinion, our best midfield 2 is Baleba and Diego Gomez, but you could argue that Ayari or Wieffer could also take that role. Jack Hinshelwood could as well. That's a position where you feel a little bit more confident and you feel like there's a little bit more stability, but even there's an opportunity for your players like Yalkoulié to come in and it sounds like he's going to go on loan, but there's an opportunity for maybe him to make a place. So I think really when it comes to our attacking front 3, front 4 and our back 3-4-5, it is very different. Going forward, this time last year, Minteh hadn't played a Premier League game. We had João Pedro up top. We had Ciso still as an option for us. It does feel all a bit strange. And actually players like Ciso, who a couple of years ago we thought... I remember speaking to Martin Keown at TalkSport where I work, and this was probably a year, 18 months ago maybe, talking about Brighton's, the classic chat that pundits like to talk about when it comes to Brighton is, the level of recruitment and the quality of your recruitment. And we're talking about all the different players, and Ciso came up, and I was a bit like, hey, he looks decent. He loves a shot. He's a bit erratic sometimes, very raw in terms of the way he plays, but you can tell he's got a talent. And he said, I think he's clearly, of all of the young talents you've got right now, the best one you've got. Now, I think he's probably been proven to be wrong with that one, just in the sense that Brighton have so many young players, and even at that time then, you had players like Caicedo and McAllister and the list, and João Pedro at that time as well. But that was his opinion, and it wasn't a crazy opinion at the time, and I still don't think it's a crazy opinion. It's just crazy now how that is just and Ciso and his Brighton career has seemingly fallen off the face of the earth. Even in the last year or so, this time last year, Enciso was a player who would have had a part to play. We all felt like there was an opportunity there for Enciso still in the Premier League, and he had to be an important part of a side under Roberto De Zerbi, and so did Buonanotte due to the injuries that we suffered last season. The season before last season, on De Zerbi's last season. And now it's got to a position where, Enciso isn't even a part of the plans by the looks of things. It looks like if he hadn't had this injury and this surgery that was going to be underway in the next few days, he'd have been sold this summer. It seems like he's been really agitating for a move. His contract obviously up in 2026, I believe. For Facundo Buonanotte, all the reports there were that, obviously he'd gone from a player who was so important in his own right to now, there's reports from Fabrizio Romano that he's the subject of a permanent transfer kind of conversation in terms of selling him to clubs like Borussia Dortmund. And that just feels weird to me. Like, I was under the impression that he was a player who Brighton had really invested in. Buying him at 18, okay, now he's 20, 21. He's had a couple of good Premier League years under his belt. And actually, going into next season, if he had an opportunity to play another season as a loanee in English football, he'd have become eligible as a homegrown player. I don't know. I think clearly it's a sign of how Brighton are progressing, that they're spending big money on a lot of players, and we've stacked our squad, particularly in attack. We're a very, very stacked attack. Defence has been solved in terms of the numbers that we have next season. Bringing in Coppola, bringing in Buscagli has really helped us, and having players like Ferdi, Kadıoğlu back from injury is a huge boost. But what that does show is that we're in a real era of transition again. And it's just mad because you kind of felt at the moment a year ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when you had this fantastic spine core of the team, you thought, okay, some of these players will come, some of these players will go, we'll move them on in the Brighton stuff, but actually we've got a core here. And it does feel like that has slightly been ripped apart. You almost felt like your Buonanotte, your Encisos, your Fergusons would be the ones that, okay, we might lose Baleba, Baleba probably wouldn't have been there at the time. We might use an Estupiñán, we might lose a Caicedo, we might lose an McAllister, we might lose a Pedro, but actually you've got a good spine in terms of you've got players to look for in the future. You've got Evan Ferguson, you feel like we'll probably see the best of him in a Brighton shirt. We didn't. Buonanotte, you think you'll probably see the best of him in a Brighton shirt, and you didn't. And Enciso the same. And the list does go on. So it's weird how it changes. And I guess my question is, to what extent is that the manager deciding that these players aren't really for him and maybe don't suit his style and the way he wants to play? To what extent is it just circumstances? And maybe the club even realising that if we really want to go to this absolute next level, these players in Enciso, Buonanotte, Ferguson, who we thought were capable of us getting us there as young talents, haven't proved to cut the mustard. So we need to just get rid of them or move them on or give them loans or help their development. But that can't be with us. Maybe it is a sign of intent. They're going out and getting players that the club do believe right here and right now can provide that. It doesn't seem necessarily in the Brighton model, as we know with the Brighton model, it is about developing players. Some of them work out, some of them don't. You buy lots of young players, and the ones that do break through and do really well, you end up making money off them, and that's how the model survives. Within that, there's also lots of players who don't make it. I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting era. It's definitely not a criticism. This is more just an observation and maybe it just struck me around the real changes we're seeing. And, that kind of super team that we saw a couple of years ago is no more. And really the spine of it is only a couple of players. Lewis Dunk, who may not have a big part to play next season, and Karu Mitoma, who, let's hope we're still going to see him next season in a Brighton shirt. I think we will. And look, clearly it's just a sign of the way clubs change, the way teams change, the way teams grow. And I think we'll come back and see this as a good thing in a few months' time. But I think what it does mean is that we're in for a season where there is going to be transition. We've got a lot of new players coming in. We're seeing players leave. But I suppose it's an opportunity for the players who have been here already for maybe a year or so. Rutter, Minteh, the list goes on. Right now, Wieffer, I can't think of many. Diego Gomez, Ayari, who was relatively new to the side. This is their season to step up Kadıoğlu. And to be fair, maybe when you frame it like that, the club clearly have put their stock in those players, and that's where the belief lies, as opposed to these maybe a bit more legacy players. You can't even call them legacy players. You know what I mean? The players that we've had for a few more years that maybe the club have realised aren't for them anymore. It's an interesting one. I'm going to be interested to see how this season plays out and to what extent the players that we have are going to be able to hit the ground running, and how much bedding in process we need, and how the players we send out on loan will get on, because it's fascinating. But yeah, let me know what you think. How are you feeling about the season? Does it feel like one where we're going to be in transition again? Does it feel weird that so many of these players who we thought the future is bright, this is our future, actually it's kind of changed a bit, and that's not how it looks now in 2025. And maybe some of these players will come back from loan, maybe it'll be a bit different, but it does feel a little bit different. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. How are you feeling about this season? Were you surprised? Have you, when you take stock to think, has it surprised you, the real turnover in plays that we've seen in the last year or so? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts. As always, if you've made it this far in the video and you've not already subscribed, please hit that button below. Hit the subscribe button, get the notifications on. It really means a lot. It means I can continue making this content as regularly as possible. I know it's annoying for me to ask, and I'm not someone who necessarily always subscribes to channels, but if you can I've realised the importance of a subscription in the last few months as I've been trying to grow this channel. So if you could, that would really help me. I appreciate it's a bit annoying. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one in a couple of days' time. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comments below. I appreciate you. See you next time. I've made a hash of this ending. But what I will say is, oh my goodness, Adam, as always, up the Albion. Jeez Louise.